What's up, guys? Welcome back to Inside Out Precision. Just got out here to the range to do some shooting for today's video, and it's currently raining, so I'm kind of tucked under the barn here, trying to keep the camera dry. But first portion of the video today is going to be on something very simple but very important, and I'm actually shocked I haven't covered this before, and that is determining your eye dominance. If you're a brand new shooter, you're probably going to want to watch this. Even if you are a cross-dominant shooter, which means you're, right eye dominant but left-handed, or vice versa, there are a couple tricks you can do to where you can still shoot with your dominant hand and not worry about your dominant eye taking over and causing a huge left or right miss. So the easiest way, I think, to establish your eye dominance, and any pro shop should be able to do this. You can do this at home with your mom, dad, husband, wife, whatever. We're just gonna hold your hands up and make a small hole through those hands. You're gonna have somebody stand right in front of you, and you're gonna just both eyes open, look at them through that hole with both your eyes open. And whatever eye they see is your dominant eye. So just like everybody has a dominant hand, you have a dominant eye that your brain will essentially lead with. Now, generally speaking, you want to shoot with your dominant eye. So 80% of the population, if you're right-handed, you're going to be right eye dominant, left-handed, left eye dominant. Where it gets tricky is when you are cross dominant, meaning I'm extremely left eye dominant but extremely right-handed. There's kind of two trains of thought as a new shooter. Most of the time, if it's a brand new shooter, especially with kids, it feels kind of awkward either way when you're drawing a bow. So I'll just start them with their dominant eye. That way we never have to worry about issues down the road. But some people are so right-handed, they can't even pick up a spoon with their left hand, but they're left eye dominant. They have to shoot right-handed. If you're not comfortable, you're never going to be accurate. So sometimes you start off, whatever your dominant hand is. The problem here is that if I try to shoot with both eyes open, as a right-handed shooter, if I'm left eye dominant, if I shoot with both eyes open, my left eye is going to take over without me noticing, and you're going to miss, literally at 20 yards, you'll miss 3 or 4 feet to the left. So in order to combat that, the simplest thing to do is either just close your dominant eye. Close the dominant eye, then I know that I'm just looking with my right eye as a right-handed shooter and everything is good. The problem is some people are so dominant with their their eye, they can't close their dominant eye. So if they're trying to shoot right-handed, you tell them to close their left eye, and they do this squinty, they can't close it. So in that case, there is a solution to that, and they make these little, I think they call them a blinder or a blocker or something, but basically it clips onto your hat bill right here, and it flips up out of the way, and then when you want, you can flip it down, and it just sits right here, so that when I'm at full draw, it's blocking the vision. If I'm a right-handed shooter, it's blocking the vision of my left eye. So that way I know that as long as I'm seeing my pin and the target, my right eye is being used. So that allows you to keep both eyes open. You don't have to squint with one eye or do the wink thing. And again, it just blocks the vision of your dominant eye so that the correct eye, for the hand you're shooting will be in use. So there are some tricks if you're cross-dominant. Like I said, about 20-25% of the population is cross-dominant, and it can wreak havoc because you kind of get in the zone, you forget to close your eye on one of them, and all of a sudden you miss. As a right-handed shooter, if you're left eye dominant, you're going to miss 4 feet to the left at 20 yards. So I can't believe, like I said, I can't believe I haven't covered that in the past. I guess I just kind of took that for granted, but I've had a couple questions on it lately, and it's pretty much the first thing we ask when somebody walks in the shop. So thought I'd give you a little rundown on that. And yeah, I'm gonna shoot some arrows. It looks like might get a little break in the cloud here, and I'm just gonna go over some random stuff, kind of just fundamentals again. It seems like a lot of our subscriber base is novice to intermediate shooters, and so getting these fundamentals down, we're gonna start with stance, just grip, anchor point, and then kind of some shot execution stuff. I think will really help, because if you want to excel, it's like any sport, you got to get those fundamentals down pat before you can expect to go anywhere with it. So I'm gonna go get my bow, try not to get this camera wet, and see if I can squeeze in here so that I'm not smacking into this barn every time I shoot. Okay, so before we can really start shooting, we need to get our stance figured out. And basically, this seems stupid, right? Because it's a stance, you stand every day. But really there's 3 kinds of stance. There's open, there is neutral, and then there's closed. Now if you watch most like competitive shooters or experienced shooters, probably 90% of them are going to have an open stance. And what I mean by open is, and I've made a little line in the dirt here, an open stance, when I address the target, so this is parallel, or excuse me, this line is perpendicular to what I'm shooting at the target there. An open stance means that my front foot is slightly behind my back foot and then angled slightly to the target. So my back foot is parallel to the shooting line, which would be going this way. And then my front foot, so like the toe of my front foot lines up with like the arch or the ball of my back foot, and then rotates at about a 45-degree angle to the target. A neutral stance is going to be where both feet are just even, and then a closed is actually going to be where my front foot is ahead of my back foot. Okay? So, sorry I'm doing this all by myself. Looking for a cameraman. Now, there is not really a right or a wrong here, okay? Stance is going to really come down to what you can be most repeatable with and what's most comfortable to you. So for me, what an open stance does is it opens up those shoulders a little bit. So when I draw and square my shoulders up, it helps load my back a little bit. So it helps me hold in that back wall a little better. A neutral stance, I can still shoot really well with a neutral stance. Everything feels good there. I just have to work a little harder to get that back loaded. For me, a closed stance, what happens is, so I'm not gonna move my shoulder at all. So here's open, here's neutral, here's closed. So this shoulder moves essentially back and forth as I rotate my torso. For me, a closed stance brings this shoulder too far inside. I don't hold well, I fatigue quicker, and yeah, after a lot of time messing with it when I first started shooting, I decided an open stance was what I want. Again, there is no right answer here. It's whatever you're most comfortable with, but whatever you find and choose, you need to stick with it. Because if my feet are aligned differently every shot, basically on follow through, my body's gonna wanna untorque slightly differently. And you're not gonna see a huge difference at 20 yards. You can get away with murder at 20 yards. But when you back up 40, 50, 60 yards, you're gonna, you know, even if that pin is dead steady, if my feet are aligned differently and my body untorques differently after that shot, you're gonna see a lot of left and right misses. So stance is crucial. Play around with it, figure out which one you want. So I'm gonna grab my bow here. I'm just gonna start shooting some arrows. I think we're at like 35 yards here. And yeah, we're just gonna go over some fundamental stuff, you know, anchor point, grip, all that stuff, and just have some fun. So give me 1 sec. All right, clearing up a little bit. Okay, so we're talking about follow through and shot execution. So building on that note, lots of people always ask me, especially with an index style, you know, should I be squeezing the trigger or should I be just pulling until it goes off? I honestly use both. So when I get to full draw, I'm gonna come in and hook that trigger. And just like I was talking about, you know, once I get on target, I build the initial tension on it with that push-pull. And then once that pin is settling down, I literally just start squeezing. I just start pinching that trigger with my finger until it fires, right? For me, that's the most consistent. Now there are guys that will just hook it and literally just pull on it till it fires. That's not wrong. But you need that back tension to help hold steady, and you need it to make sure you're shooting from the back of that wall every time. So again, you know, when I come in, and this really helps if you, so look how short, set this down for a sec. I've talked about the length of your release before. So look where that comes to on my hand when it's just sitting in my hand, right? It's not, if it's comfortable in your hand, if it's way up your finger at rest, it's gonna be way, way too long at full draw. You're gonna be reaching for that trigger. I wanna come in and hook that trigger pretty deep in my finger. So like if I was gonna grab something with my finger and pull it, I'm not gonna grab it like this, right? I'm gonna hook it. So when I come in, finger comes around that trigger. Now this is not to be confused with squeezing the release with my other fingers and hooking it. These fingers want to be somewhat relaxed, but I'm still gonna hook that trigger like so. So then that pin comes on, I'm building pressure, start squeezing until the arrow fires. Now, this takes time, okay? So do this, start with this up close. Don't worry about where you're hitting, just focus on building that muscle memory. The more you practice shot execution, the more you're obviously gonna be practicing. So you're building that muscle memory of shot execution, you're shooting more arrows. As I shoot more arrows, sorry, I keep picking this up and putting it down. You know, as I'm shooting more arrows, I'm starting to hold steadier while building that muscle memory. Pretty soon you're gonna get a steady hold combined with a really smooth release, and your accuracy is gonna peak. And that's when you really start seeing gains. But in order to get that muscle memory, you know, don't back up to 60, 70 yards where your pin's floating all over the place, because it's really hard. Your brain does not want that pin to fire when it's not in the middle, when the pin's not in the middle, right? So practice this up close, like 15 yards, 10 yards, whatever. But really work on that muscle memory. So you'll notice when you're watching, like, you don't really see my finger. You're not gonna see my finger do this, right? Like, I'm just building tension on that trigger until the bow fires. So hook, tension, squeeze. I'm touching arrows right in the middle there. Now, once you get that motion down, you can do that slow, you can do it fast. You know, if I got an animal that steps out in front of me and there's just a short window to shoot, you know, once you get that muscle memory down, like, your brain will know, your body will know, like, okay, that's about to fire. So I can do it quickly, I can do it slowly. You know, if the wind is blowing and I need to wait for it, it's not just gonna go off, you know, when I don't want it to. I can sit there with my finger on the trigger and not feel like I have to squeeze it. Just like that. Shoot one more here. Honestly, the best way to do this, like, to look at your alignment and your form and all that stuff, is just film yourself. Everybody's got a camera on their phone now. Set it up. You can have it facing you so you can actually look at it and see it. You know, when I was younger, I didn't have any, like, formal coaching, okay? I had some great mentorship from Wayne, who I now work for, and some other guys in the shop. But when I went to my first national tournament and saw the level that these guys could shoot at, I literally would go to the range, you know, 3 hours before the tournament started and stay after the shooting was done that day for 2 hours. And I would just watch these pros shoot. And I had a little digital camera back then, and I would, like, you know, take a picture of them, and then I would go home and stand in front of the mirror, or back to the hotel and stand in front of the mirror and try to make myself look like they did in that picture. So it's really helpful, you know, if you can see what you should be doing and then watch yourself doing it, it really helps in your form. So film yourself when you're shooting. So you may notice too, kind of exaggerating that follow through, holding it there. You know, as a new shooter, especially with, you can do this anytime, but I always tell people, like, you know, imagine you're gonna watch that arrow disappear right behind the pin, or like you're gonna drive that pin in right behind the arrow after the shot. Now, obviously that bow needs to have a little bit of play. It's not gonna stay perfectly still, but if you picture that when you're shooting, it's gonna help you drive that bow arm forward and not drop out of the shot when that bow goes off. So that's really important to me. You know, when I was coaching that girl Maya for a long time, if we started getting those low shots, I would say, you know, drive the pin through the center of the target, and the next arrow would just bury right in the center. So that really helps. I'm gonna go pull these arrows real quick. I don't want to get a camera wet, but I'll be right back. All right. So there's kind of a lot packed into this video, but these are all just like kind of core common things that I see. And so getting that good like brace or back tension has a lot to do with alignment of my shoulders, right? So if my front shoulder is too high or inside, or my back shoulder is too high, I'm gonna have a hard time holding that pin in the middle. It's gonna wanna drop, generally speaking. And that's just comes from, you know, if this shoulder is high like this, essentially it acts as a hinge. So as that muscle starts to fatigue and break down, you know, that shoulder starts, this is exaggerated, but that shoulder starts to come up and that hand starts to drop. Conversely, if that back shoulder is too high, if it's up here, as I pull, it's gonna pull my front arm down. So you wanna try to get that body pretty level. You know, if you're leaned back a little bit like this, there's a lot of people that shoot like that. That doesn't really hurt anything as long as the tops of your shoulders are level. You know, in a perfect world, I'd say, yeah, you want to be just standing there like a T, but honestly, most guys you're going to see leaning back just a tiny little bit. So again, here's incorrect, shoulders high and inside. There's correct, down and out in front of you. Think about doing like a jumping jack. Like if I'm doing a jumping jack, I'm not lifting my arm up with my shoulder, right? I'm raising my arm with my lat. And it's the same with your bow arm. You know, I'm not, to come up to the target, if I need to aim high or low, I'm not doing this, you know. I'm bringing that arm up. You should feel it kind of right against your rib cage, where your lat comes into your rib cage, right under your armpit right there. So you want to get that brace, that arm out in front of you and get it braced. That pin's gonna float around a little bit. Like I am not holding real steady today. It was chest and tricep day in the gym yesterday, and I am a little sore. But I just keep working that pin towards the middle, squeezing that trigger, and as long as that pin is moving towards the middle when that shot breaks, that front arm is gonna help give it direction towards the center, even if it's not perfectly in the middle when it fires. Okay. Okay, let's go look at those real quick. I'm just kind of aiming center mass on that giant bag, but you know, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, guys, like even if your form and alignment and grip and all that isn't like textbook, as long as it's consistent and you practice a lot, you can really make it work. You know, there's so many, yeah, see, not great. I mean, couple where I was aiming, couple a little high. I should probably aim at these because they're way more defined, but I just always get drawn to the center. But, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to need 2 hands for those. But even if it's not consistent, or excuse me, even if it's not like textbook, your form, as long as it's consistent, even if it's a little wrong, if it's consistently wrong, you can shoot good groups. You can tune a bow to a grip that has a little bit of torque. You know, guys shoot with a more bent arm sometimes than a straight arm. There's certain trends that you need to follow, like certain fundamentals that you want to try to emulate, but it's not like cut and dry. The biggest thing I can tell you to get better is practice. Shoot. Like you see these guys that are shooting these amazing groups at distance and whatnot, it's because they shoot their bow every single day. They're shooting like 60 to 150 arrows a day. So take that for what it is. Go shoot your bow a bunch. Hit me up if you have any questions. Remember, precision is the decision. And hopefully I'll see you on the range. Maybe even this one. Maybe at TAC. I don't know.